Good morning. I'm Ariana Newcomer. It is Wisdom Wednesdays. And my topic today is I didn't know my body belonged to me. And today's live was inspired by an event I went to yesterday and an email I read yesterday from an organization I support about women's agency, our control over our own bodies, our own psyches, our own selves, and the cultural silencing that still exists, that still is going on. I ended up in two emotionally abusive relationships with men. And even though I grew up in, very middle-class family with loving parents, lots of siblings, we weren't wealthy, but we had enough. And I was encouraged to do anything that I wanted to do with my life. My parents let me go to Ireland when I was a junior in high school. I spent a year over there. I worked part-time as an au pair, which I was not very good at, being 15 and 16. And I went to school. So I had the opportunity to spend a school year in another culture, which was really, really valuable. But I had thought that I was much more ready to be away from my family and even my country than I was. So it was actually kind of tough, but still ultimately a good relationship. And when I went on to college, this was the 70s, I actually had sex quite a number of times when I didn't really want to. I was not raped. It was not that kind of situation, but I didn't know how to say no, and I didn't feel that I could say no in certain circumstances. And yesterday at this event, this was Women Rocking Business Live, Sage Levine's event, and I'm a graduate of one of her programs. It was here in my town of Santa Cruz, California. So I went to reconnect with people and get some inspiration and motivation, and it absolutely worked for that. And she is very great at giving back. She has always in her business made it a point to give to organizations that are supporting women. She has helped women move out of prostitution and kind of sexual slavery in Bali. She's contributed to things for women in Africa and worked with an organization that helps the Achuar people in Ecuador, and especially the women there. And yesterday she had a woman, and I'm sorry I didn't look up her name, who started this organization called Just Like My Kid. It's justlikeMyKid.org, and they sponsor people in Uganda, women in Uganda who are helping girls in Uganda. And it's very much locally based. They really work with the local organizations. They work with the local religious leaders. They work with people in the communities. And the women leading the programs are women who live in the communities. And it's a girl power program. And I just heard these heartbreaking stories. She talked about a circle that they had, and there were 17 girls in this circle, and the leader of the circle was a local Ugandan woman. Asked, how many of you have been sexually assaulted? And every girl raised her hand, everyone. So there's a whole education that needs to go on in our culture, and more women have AIDS in Uganda than men. More new cases of AIDS are in women, and this is primarily because these sexual abusers are older men who are abusing these younger women, and these men may have AIDS and then they pass it to the women. And these women, girls, were being attacked on their way home from school or on their way to the water hole. So after they get home from school, they have to go to the water hole to get water. And this was one of the most vulnerable times for them. And one of the girls who had gone through this program, the Girl Power program, literally said, before Girl Power, I didn't know that my body belonged to me. But just think about that. We have this cultural idea, and I have a piece of that. So I haven't been raped, and I didn't have it to the degree that these girls have it, because I didn't grow up in that same culture. But I had a piece of that cultural story. It's in the air we breathe, it's in the water we drink. We grow up with that as women, that we don't truly have agency over ourselves. And as I was thinking about, I ended up in these 2 emotionally abusive relationships. How did I do that? How did that happen? Well, it has to do with this issue too. You get involved with someone, and of course, a lot of these emotionally abusive men are extremely charming, and they're very good at being loving and exciting and wonderful when you first are getting together with them, and the abuse doesn't begin at the beginning, so you get yourself in there, and then you kind of feel stuck, and they start eating away at you, saying nasty things to you, just tearing you down bit by bit by bit, and that makes it harder and harder to get out. And with the first one, I had actually left my first husband for him, so I had this inner thing of this had damn well better work out so that I can justify to myself that I actually left my first husband for this man. So I stayed for 4 years in that relationship, which got worse over time. And then I got out of that one, and I met my kid's dad. And that again started really well. And I thought I had a true partner, and we had a true partnership. And it took longer for that relationship to devolve, but it did devolve over time into one that became emotionally abusive. But I had kids with him. So I had lots more reason to really try and work it out and stay. And I actually had 2 friends say to me, one, several years apart, don't you see that he's killing you? And they meant killing me, me emotionally. And the other one said, yeah, he almost killed you after, some years after we had gotten the divorce. So, and we don't see these things necessarily when we're in them. We don't realize it when we are in it. But this is a cultural story that we hold. And one of the things, because I have been through this kind of stuff, it's actually given me tools and understanding to help other women who may be coming out of similar kinds of situations, and to heal these wounds of the cultural silencing. So my work with voice, reclaiming our authentic voice, it's so important for us as women, but it's also important for us to reclaim our ownership of our bodies, of ourselves, claim our sovereignty, and also to be able to claim our wisdom and really become the mentors and leaders and teachers that we are meant to be, and to begin to continue, because this conversation is shifting, to be part of this change, of actually changing and shifting this conversation that women's bodies don't belong to us, that we are just a sexual object, and it's our duty in a way to be there for the men, when it's truly our duty to be there for ourselves, and to find what it is that we truly want to do, to be able to say no. And one of the things this Girl Power program does in Uganda is it teaches the girls to speak up, because they didn't have a voice. They didn't know they could have a voice. And still many of the women I work with suffer from bits of that. We don't feel in our deepest selves that we have a right to speak up and speak out for ourselves. And yet we're beginning to. And then sometimes when we do, it comes out in a really strident, angry way because we've been holding it in for so long. So learning to speak up sooner, to say no sooner. So these girls are taught to say to these men as they're being approached, potentially to be attacked, I know your name, I know where you live, and I will tell. And then that helps them be safe. It helps them not be raped because the men know that they're not going to be silent as they have been for so many years, which has given the men a free pass to continue doing this stuff. And this is all part of this greater dominator culture, which this is again Rianne Eisler's work, which I use and teach in the Wise Woman Immersion, along with reclaiming our voices and reclaiming our sovereignty and claiming our wisdom. The dominator culture has taught that power is maintained through fear and violence. And part of the way that the male half of the population has maintained power over the female half of the population is through rape and sexual violence. And I like using the words dominator culture, and the alternative to that is partnership culture, because it takes the onus off of men. And the men have been the ones who have been on top in the dominator culture, but it has damaged them to be like that too, and to be expected to be the dominators and to perpetrate violence. And that does something in your soul, I believe. And the souls of men are just as important as the souls of women. So that as we are shifting this conversation and moving into more of partnership, this is going to be as beneficial for men as it is for women. So I'd love you men out there to understand that the more you come into this partnership relationship with women, the better it's going to be for you too, as well as for us. We will all become more whole. Men will be able to reclaim their emotional selves as women claim our sovereignty and our voices. And men will be able to reclaim their tender selves and their whole emotional life will come back to them. And being in this kind of relationship with women, whether you are attracted to same gender or opposite gender, or whether you're in a transition, the partnership culture will help all of us be able to be more fully human with each other, bring more love into the world, and help create the world that we need, the kind of culture that we need to be able to make the shifts that will have us be able to have a planet we can still live on. So claiming our sovereignty for women, my body belongs to me. For men, I come into partnership with women. I acknowledge that her body belongs to her and my body belongs to me, because men and boys have suffered from sexual abuse too. So the organization in Uganda, if you want to look it up, is justlikeMychild.org. And I just started a monthly contribution to them. And another organization that I contribute to is called the Underground Railroad. I make a monthly contribution to them as well. And I just read an email from them that talked about a rescue mission that they ran in the Amazon. They help support local law enforcement to actually go after child traffickers and rescue children who are being trafficked into the sex trade. So they do this in, all over the world. So there are people who are really, really working to change things. And so I recommend that we all do as much as we can in our own way and in the ways that can work for us financially to assist these organizations. But it starts here. It starts inside. And we do this kind of work in the Wise Women Immersion. I'm just beginning to enroll a new group for that. And if you'd like to talk with me about healing the wounds of cultural silencing, claiming your wisdom, claiming your voice, especially if you're a closet visionary. A lot of the women I work with are closet visionaries who have actually big visions and dreams, but they haven't allowed themselves to really speak them and put them out there. Because again, we have been taught that's not for us to do, but it is for us to do. So I'd love to talk with you. I'll put a link in the comments. See you next time.